it's scary. It's so intimate that people prefer not to go there because they're somewhat ashamed. I think shame is one of the lowest energies you can get to. And I know that because
Welcome to the Raw and Real podcast. Are you dreaming of changing your life through opening a business? Or are you curious what obstacles entrepreneurs had to overcome on their journey? Then you're in the right place. My name is Agnes Pillik and I'm your host. Hey everyone, welcome back to another episode of Raw and Real. Today's guest on the show is David de Kock. He's a best-selling author and the co-founder of 365 Days Successful, a company that is focused on personal leadership and development. With the mission to make the Netherlands the happiest country in the world, he developed together with his co-founder Arjan a 13-step framework on how to live a happy and successful life. Hey David, thank you so much for joining me today.
Thank you. That's a very nice introduction. It's also so nice when you hear my name in English. But anyway, I'll get used to it one day.
Yeah, I'm really happy to have you today on the show. I was really looking forward to talking to you. And I really admire actually what you're doing. So
you actually visited one of my seminars, right?
Correct.
I remember almost a year ago. Yeah, that's nice. So you do know a bit what we do. That's nice.
Yeah. So I thought a nice starting point for our conversation would be how your life was before you started the company. Maybe you can tell us something a little bit what was going on.
Wow, that's a long time ago. It's almost a decade ago. Well, I was working as a CEO of quite a large marketing company, and we were doing pretty well, actually. And still, somewhere deep down inside, there was this feeling of incompletion or doing things with some expectation, but not knowing really why I was doing them. You kind of go from one thing to another, right? You study, you drop out in my case, then you work, and then you get another job. And I became an entrepreneur, and then from being an entrepreneur, you kind of, make it work or not, but in my case, it kind of worked. But it still didn't satisfy me to the deepest level.
Yeah.
And then one of my colleagues, who Arjan just hired, Arjan also worked with me already in the previous company. And a colleague of ours, he got very serious cancer. And he asked me, would I stay working there in that very specific place? Would I keep on doing what I was doing if I would have this bad news myself? 3 years later, he died of cancer, and he became one of my best friends. And we had a very interesting journey together, from giving seminars to overthinking life to all kind of really deepening conversations I was always longing for, but never really had them on that severe level.
Yeah.
Can you imagine if you stare death in the eyes all the time when you're so ill? And he started to challenge me. Would you stay if this would happen to you? Because he quit it. That was actually the very interesting thing. We offered him a job, and he was very good in what he was doing. And he decided to quit because he said, my life is probably going to be very short. So I'm going to do what I really want to do. And then he died February 2012, and he asked me to read his last words at his funeral. And I decided to do that. Of course, you do that, right?
Yes.
I didn't know how though, but I decided to open the envelope there and read his last words. And translated, it would sound something like, don't die with me, but do something with this emotion. Do something with it. Don't die with me. And then Arjan asked me the same evening, what if we don't die with him? Because you can grieve for a very long time, but it's also energy which you can use. If you really get the message, don't die with me, but do something with it. What would we do? That was his question. And then I had my answer. Well, I would like to continue to develop myself, to start masterminds, to be in connection with people who want to make more out of life than just doing a job. And that became 365 Days of Success.
And how did you really figure out that you wanted to do this if you were before more in marketing?
Well, it's actually not so far away from what I was doing before, except for the fact that we were doing marketing for other companies. And now we still do a lot of marketing. I mean, now we market our own product. And our product is based on self-development. And on a deeper level, actually, to reconnect with a lot of people who think alike. Because that's basically what our program does. We, on a deeper level, believe that everything you need is already there. And that was also in my case. I mean, I was already doing this with Yip. He died, but I could continue doing it. I was inspired by his lifestyle. I was inspired by his way of dealing with his illness. And what I learned from him was that, and actually that's a quote of him, you don't have to die from cancer to learn the same lessons. So he learned so much. He even wrote a book about it. Cancer is a gift. And that's the title of the book. Cancer is a gift. And I thought, oh my God, you're so right. You don't have to die. But most people wait until the pain is so big to start the real change. And then I got that same evening the same amount of pain. I mean, I was losing one of my best friends. And there were hundreds and hundreds of people there. There was national television even on his funeral. And I was the one reading it for them. And then I realized, oops, this is also for me. He's also saying this to me, of course. Don't die with me. Do something with it. So that's why we started. And of course, without much of a plan. I mean, everything still had to be developed. But there was this spark in me who had no chance of doing anything else, actually. It was a self-chosen one-way street. And that's one thing I really, well, yeah, it's a bit weird to say that about yourself, but I admire that about this period of time.
Mm-hmm.
That we were, it's a certain courage which we felt, and I'm pretty sure if we wouldn't have done it then, this window of opportunity closes, and then you would find me probably now still running a marketing company or something like this.
And how did you come up with that framework?
Well, as all creation goes, I guess most people are inspired by others, like we were inspired by the life of Yip. So we started to do some research, basic research, Googling, reading books about what do people do when they come in such a interesting positions, interesting situations. And his situation was, because he was very young, it was very unavoidable. I mean, he was going to die. And like Yip said, everybody will die one day. So it's final. Only most people don't live with the idea that it's final.
That's true.
So we started to investigate and just to research what would happen if everybody starts to, and starting with ourselves, what would we do if we all of a sudden accept that we are mortal beings? And then would you still make the same choice? And in our case, it was very clear that we made at least the choice to do something else, to try something else. And especially here in Holland, I mean, it's pretty impossible not to succeed. I mean, maybe not exactly in the targets you put onto yourself or on the goals you want to achieve, but you also will not drown from or die from hunger. There is always a certain social security and stuff like this to catch you if you fall. And then we were thinking, maybe it's not only a nice thing to do, just a chance, but maybe it's our moral obligation. Because if you see where we are here in Holland at least, and then compare it with the rest of the world, it's maybe also our responsibility to do something, to wake the people up, if you want to put it that way, and make something of their lives and make a difference in the lives of others. That's actually the real thing. For us, success is not about driving a Ferrari. For us, it's on a deeper level, do what you really want to do. which is in most cases make a difference for somebody else, because that's what makes you truly happy.
And in the beginning, when you started teaching and being a coach, what was your experience like?
Well, two things. There was, especially in the beginning, like almost 10 years ago, there was a lot of resistance. It didn't exist on the scale we perform in Holland, what we do now. I mean, we fill very big audiences, very big venues. And of course, not from the beginning, but it grew pretty rapidly into thousands of people doing this. But of course, there was a lot of resistance. I remember our first television interview, and they were so skeptical. And still, I mean, media is sometimes very loving, but most of the time very skeptical about us doing what we do. And that for sure has something to do with the scale we do it with. But still, so that's one thing. If you really try to stand out, there are always people who try to push you back in. So that's one thing. On the other hand, we grew very rapidly, and we're still very rapidly growing. And that also proves that a lot of people are hungry to do this. So those are the two experiences I guess I kind of had, from the start.
And how was it for you to teach on stage? Because a lot of people also have anxiety to do that.
If you really find your thing, it doesn't matter. So people ask me, do you do one-on-one coaching, for example? I said, yes, I do that. Only in my case, there are a few hundred or sometimes a few thousand people watching. But I don't mind, because if I would mind, I would not be a very good coach. It's not about me. It's about the coachee. So I follow the person on stage in my case, but it wouldn't be any different if we would be in a room. It's a little bit more naked, true, but if you can handle that, and I think I can, it gives very spectacular situations, because it's really interesting to see somebody working with their questions, with their topics, with their themes on a large stage. It's very interesting, and I think that for some people it's actually really helpful also, because you so much want to get it that it's kind of helpful. There's so much leverage on a stage that I don't get stupid questions, for example, because if you get there, you're very sure that you also want to solve it. So people do basically the work themselves. It's not me who fix something. They do something. I would be a very useless coach if I would fix them, because the only thing they learn then is that they need a guru to fix them. And I strongly believe that on a deeper level, everything is already there. So also your healing, if you want to put it that way, is already there. The only thing is that you cannot see it yet. Well, I can help you see that, maybe not, but usually it kind of works that you see it yourself, and then you'll learn a lot more. If you realize that you did that yourself, my work is accomplished. If you learn that you need me in order to heal you, you didn't learn anything.
All right, strong words. And overall, I remember that you told me last time that also your dad played quite a big role in your life.
Mm-hmm.
Can you tell us a little bit about your relationship with him and his view on what you're doing?
Well, I think in everybody's life, the parents or the absence of parents has a very strong output on how your life is going to go, especially if you don't do the work. I mean, if you just stay in your programming, you're born into a family, right? And then there is a father and a mother, or there is no father and a mother, or there's no mother and whatever. There's always something. And you learn by growing older how to survive in this family, or how to survive in the absence of a family, also fine. But that's how you learn to survive. Then later, and I'm talking about 10, 20, 30 years later, you have to relearn how to survive nowadays. But if you don't do the work, if you don't relearn, let's say, then you still run the old program. It's like using your mobile phone from the 90s or early 2000, trying to make the same things happen in a modern society. it won't work. So if you use old software in a new situation, it won't work. Not that successful. And so in my case, I was born in a religious family with a very loving mother and a father who tried to be there for us, but he was very young. He came from a very patriarchic background, so very masculine. No, we do it this way, and not so much not so many words. Just do it this way. And for me, that was a very difficult position to grow up in. And now I'm very thankful that I grew up in this kind of atmosphere, because without that difficulty, I wouldn't be where I am now. So the beauty of that is that if you don't judge in the moment, you will see the value of it if you dare to look at it this way. I mean, that's one thing I learned from Yip as well. He wrote the book about cancer is a gift. He saw the beautiful things as well, because they're also very beautiful things. Of course, he didn't want to have it, but that was not an option not to have it. He did everything not to have it, but that option was gone.
Yeah,
right?
It was still there.
And the same with being raised in a family like this. That was already history. That is already history. So I can fight it, but it's useless because it did already happen. So now, in looking backwards, I love it. I had the most amazing childhood, and it was not easy. It was not very smooth for me. But I can judge it now. But I can better see for where it brought me. Right? Without these difficulties, I would never learn to figuring it out myself. For example, as I shared with you before, I didn't graduate, and that put me in a very interesting position, because of course I could become a burglar, but I could also become an entrepreneur, and I chose the last one. So I was 14 years old and started my company because I needed to make something of my life, and I was pretty good at it, I think. So we kind of got a successful business. In early 20 it became more successful, and later on it became quite successful. And then you learn these basic skills from doing. So that was my education, you can say. And then I discovered also early 20s, actually already when I was 18, I did my first personal development program. And it was so awesome. There was this new world of skills you can learn. For example, relationships, or how to deal with your parents, or even making money. It is a skill. And I realized all these skills my friends didn't learn. Why? Because they went to school. And on school, you don't learn the 4 basic skills: mindset, relationships, how to make a career, and how to attract money. Those first basic 4 skills you don't learn at school, interestingly enough. And I think if you learn these 4 skills, and I started to develop them from a young age, never with the intention to teach them actually, but at one point one of my business coaches said, "Why don't you start to teach?" And that's what I was doing in early 30s. I started to teach first people in my own company. Well, we had about 1,000 employees, so I could make quite of a start. Arjan started to do the same thing. We kind of liked it. Then Yip came in my life. He showed me a completely different way of approaching things. Then he unfortunately died. He asked, "Well, don't die with me, but do something with it." And then Arjan asked me, shall we do this? Shall we start to teach these 4 basic skills? That is actually the framework behind the framework. Those 4 areas in your life, you want to, I don't know for others, but I wanted to learn these 4 skills to the level of being able to teach them. Because if you are able to teach something, then you have to understand it. If you understand something and you can teach it, then you really master something. And I really wanted to master it. Yeah. So back to your question. How did my father influence my life? In a very perfect way. Now, my father and I are very good friends. So our relationship transformed a lot. He also did a lot of self-development. Actually, he was even earlier with that than I was. So That's very nice to
So
see.
why did your relationship transform? Do you think that it's dependent on your personal insights?
Absolutely. Well, I realized that now I'm 42, and not even so long ago, but somewhere around my 40s, I realized that I can wait for him to show up. But what if I turn that around? What if I do show up in his life? My father is a professional golfer that he's retired and he's every day on the golf course. So that's why I call him a professional golfer, right? That's what he do. That's what he does.
Yeah.
That's what he does. He's not very good at it, but that's what he does. And I have nothing with golf, but I do have something with my father. And I wanted to meet this man. Now, where can I meet him from a mature perspective? Not from a child perspective, because then he has to come to me, tell me that I'm great. You know, my drawings have to be the nicest one ever, and then later my job has to be great. But I couldn't draw very well, and my jobs were always things he didn't understand. But I was 40 or around 40, and I realized, okay, if I want to meet this man in the last part of his life, I better go golfing. So I started to follow private golf lessons. And I also don't have the talent. So it took me quite some golf lessons to at least hit some ball. And now we are playing every week or every other week, depends a bit on the weather. But I do play every week a few hours golf. I still don't like it very much, but I really like it to do it together with him.
Mm-hmm.
Because what happens? I go to his golf club, for example. I arrive and I meet his friends. And through his friends, I hear all of a sudden things about me I never know. I never knew how he would speak about me if I'm not there. Now I do know. It's very interesting. I hear things how he's with my mom. We have conversations about relationships, for example. And it's so funny that in the in-between time, I get what I want. And in the rest of the time, we just play golf. And we're having a good time. And since we are both very on the same not so good level, we have a lot of fun. So that's the mature way of approaching for me. I mean, I don't know for anybody else, but for me, it's a very nice way to, well, it's not healing, but to get another perspective on an old story. It's new software in a new situation, and it works perfectly fine.
And he doesn't come to your seminars, right? And that used to bother you a lot?
They do. My mom and my father, they do come from time to time. Very, very, very rarely. And it never bothered me. But for example, the parents and the family of Arjan are always there. Always. And at one point, I do remember we were performing, it's 1.5 years ago, we were having a seminar in the Ziggo Dome, which is a pretty big venue over here. And it was kind of bigger than I thought it would ever land. No, it was quite of a success. Literally, U2 was playing a few days later after us in the same venue. So we felt kind of, the ego liked it, let's say. And of course, then it's nice if your parents are there and they show up. They
see that.
In the light of your elders, it's nice to see that, right? To swim a bit in their proud.
Sure.
But they were not there. And for me, it was so normal. So it's absolutely fine. I mean, they were having a great holiday and everything is fine. And then I think it was the end of the first day. We did 2 days there. I think it was at the end of the first day. Then Arjan's dad came to me and he said, "Wow, it was so amazing. And you were so great. And I also said it a bit on behalf of your parents." And then it started to hurt me. Then all of a sudden I realized, okay, I'm so used to do it alone or do it, I'm not alone at all, but to do it in this way, in this approach a little bit alone. And then all of a sudden he made a point out of it. And then I felt, oh, wow, that's indeed a bit strange. It's like my world championships and I'm about to win it. So that's, of course, it does something with me. But that was also the approach. Actually, maybe that was the turning point that I realized I can wait the rest of my life for them to show up, which never bothered me, but that triggered me. And then I thought, okay, but I'm a wiser adult right now, not the ignorant child anymore. So what would a wiser adult do? He wouldn't wait for his father to show up, because it's mainly about my father in this case. I don't show up in his world either. I mean, I don't like golf. I had all kind of assumption about golf. Marbles for elders, for old people. That's how I call it. and now, I mean, I did the same to him, basically. Not with much of a judgment, but of course I did judge on a medium level about it, and I didn't show up as well. I never called him how his tournament went or how he is, whatever. We see each other on birthdays and all these already, established meetups. So here we are. I realized all of a sudden, not that my father per se should be there, but it would be nice if there is a connection between a father and a son on this level. Why shouldn't I be the first one to take this initiative? And now we are having a lot of fun, and I get to know a completely other person than I thought he would be. So that's super nice. And yes, the last seminar in the AFOS, which was also a pretty big one, he did show up for about an hour, and it was interesting. It was a long time that they showed up, and it's fine. No, I don't do this work to get the blessing of my parents. I mean, that was never why I started it. So it's not necessary, and sometimes it's nice.
And you do a lot of coaching when it comes to relationships as well, right? So in general, I know that you split up relationships in 3 parts. So love, the relationship, and intimacy. So I remember that once you said that you don't need to be in love for a good relationship, but you need to be friends. So what is your take on being in love?
Wow. Well, being in love is very dangerous, because what happens if you are in love, you are chemically so different that, well, let me put it another way. If you're in love, you get an insight, or actually a foresight, of a possible future together, assuming that it's mutual. So if 2 people are head over heels in love, then they might get a glimpse of what it could be if they would do the work. Then the hormonal chemical industry shuts down, most of the time around 3 months, and then you wake up, and then often it's like, what happened here? Who are you? So let me put it a little bit more clinical. When a person is in love, you're so focused on the other that you basically become a little bit the other. You want to do what the other does. You want to eat what the other eats. You're super curious about the life of the other. So you're totally in the world of somebody else. And especially if it's mutual, then the other person has the same with you, right? So there are both people, and you see a little bit on my hand gesture, you are over the bridge. So I'm over the bridge with my fiance, for example, and she's over the bridge with me completely. So we live in each other's worlds, which is amazing because it's new and it's tasty and it's satisfying, and it's so dangerous because you might lose it. So what do? If you might lose it, and you throw everything in? For example, a lot of sexuality. Because what does sex do is compensating this insecurity without words. So you kind of feel each other again. You know on a hormonal deep level, okay, she's still mine. Mm-hmm. I'm satisfied for 10 minutes, but at least you don't have this fear for a bit. Well, after these 3 months, you get a little bit closer back to your own world. And after a while, especially if a relationship is longer and longer and longer, you're only in your own world. And then it's pretty difficult to cross the bridge to the other. And you already introduced these 3 different areas of a relationship, and it's on all 3 in a different way difficult. Some people are easy to cross the bridge when it comes to practicalities. We can work it out perfectly, practically. I mean, I know exactly what you want, you know exactly what I want, what I need. We can give it to each other on a practical level. So we can be in each other's world pretty easy. This bridge is established. But when it comes about intimacy, for example, then it's so difficult to really cross the bridge because you have to fulfill my need. And then I might consider to fulfill yours.
Mm-hmm.
And this is not from a strategic point of view, but this is from a how it works point of view. We just kind of roll into a relationship. You kind of all of a sudden have a relationship. And yeah, as perfect as it seemed in the beginning, the in love phase, there is always this moment of disappointment in a relationship. There is always this moment, oh, you're not going to save me. I so much thought that you would be the one. I thought you would be the one. Why are you not the one? And of course, the other has the same disappointment at one point. And then a relationship, in our theory, then a relationship starts.
So you think that point comes when someone doesn't meet your expectations or like your dreams that you fantasized about?
I think it's even deeper. I think it's compensating what you missed in your childhood. So the moment you wake up in reality, you realize that this person is also not going to save you. Like your mother also couldn't save you. Like your father couldn't save you. Like your whatever, first big loves also couldn't save you. Oh no, not again. You're also not going to save me. And of course, you were also already not able to save the other, because if you would try to save somebody, you lose yourself. You cannot save somebody. Like I said earlier, if you really could save somebody, the other needs you. That's why we tend to save people in relationships, and those relationships are not good on the long run. Because it gets so dependent on each other, that is poison. So you really want to learn that you are okay and that you actually don't need the other. You might want the other. And here's a very different distinction, very important distinction. If you don't need the other, but you want the other, there is immediately sexual energy. If you need the other, there is no sexual energy at all. There's parent energy. Because if I need you, you become my mother.
Mm-hmm.
But if I want you, there's this desire.
And how do you think we can best overcome that need? Because I think that quite a lot of people have that.
Skill. It's basically skills. So love and relationship is a very, very, very important skill. And there is so much research about that these days. There are so many books written about it. There's every day a new book published. There are so many courses. There is so much very relevant therapy also available. I wrote already a couple of books about it, but my relationship really started to grow and get tremendous depth when we started to do therapy. And for the record, my fiance is a relationship therapist. But I never realized that we needed therapy ourselves, which is a very stupid assumption. Because only from the point of growth, everybody needs therapy. And it's not because there's something wrong. We have a really nice relationship. Looking from the outside in, I think we have one of the most perfect relationships you can imagine. From the inside out, that's a whole different story. Because we do have our issues. We do have our irritations. We do have 3 children who are not always the easiest, in also very different stages of their development and age and all of that. So, of course, we constantly learn and relearn who we need to be and who we want to be in this relationship. And therapy is so amazingly helpful.
And
so
what were the insights that you had throughout therapy, and what were like?
Well, as I said before, the falling in love phase is the most dangerous phase, because you think you understand somebody and you think you understand yourself, but basically you lose yourself in it.
So do you think then it's better to start a relationship when you're not in love in a way?
Well, it doesn't matter. Research shows that it's not relevant to really be head over heels in love, because in the in love phase you also, well, there is positive attachment and negative attachment, right? So when you really in love with somebody and you kind of start to depend on this energy, you attach in a negative way. I need you. There is this again. But the moment you realize, wow, we are really good friends. And the funny thing is, for a friend, if my best friend would call me now, no matter what he asks me, I would do it. because he's my best friend, right? And I started to realize that me and my fiance, Emanuela is her name, a very beautiful lady also. But if she would ask me now to do something, I can much more relate it to a friend who asked me something with much more love I can give it than if my old idea of partnership asked me something, because your partner has to save you in my old paradigm. She has to be there for me as well. So it's kind of should be a balance between giving and taking. And why I don't do that with friends. If my best friend calls me now, I jump in the car. I didn't even ask him why I should come. I would be there because I know if he asks me something, he needs me, right? Why don't we do this in a relationship? Or why don't we do this? Why do we do this only in the beginning of a relationship? But anyway, if you go back to this, it's kind of a very unrealistic mental state of being in love, right? Then this new state is coming, and a new phase is coming, and we call this the power struggle. So after the in love phase, where everything is fine, and even if it's not so fine, you just have amazing sex, and then it feels fine at least. But after a few months, and sometimes after a year or so, it becomes more serious, right? And then people start to talk about living together, or how should we proceed having this relationship. And then we call this the phase of the power struggle. Because then it's about who is going to do the dishes. Are we going to have a traditional living together, or are we going to have a modern living together? With traditional, I mean, are you going to do the dishes and the wash and the female things? Well, I can see in your eyes, you're not up for it. And neither was my fiancée. She said, okay, great, but then you have to marry some other woman, but not me. And it's fine, but that means there has to be a certain level of practicality in a relationship. After the phase of this power struggle, there is a very nice phase, and it's the phase of the status quo. Then you kind of figure it out, how you're going to do it, what you want from each other, and you can give it to each other. And that could be a long period of, sometimes very short, but it could be a long period of relatively calm living together. It's nice, it's comfortable. You kind of add things to each other's lives. It's great. But there is always, always, always the fourth phase. And that's the phase of crisis. And we call it the phase of transformation, actually, because crisis is nothing else than a pre-announcement of transformation. It's the pre-announcement of somebody, most of the time both, but at least one of you is going to grow. Having a new desire. Having different needs. Wanting to grow in a certain direction.
Yeah.
It's curious about something new.
Yeah.
And it's most of the time the partner, the not so conscious partner, who's trying to not let that happen.
Mm-hmm.
Why? Because it's dangerous. Because after the transformational phase, we know by instinct it's either the end of the relationship or you fall in love again. But then you fall in love again with a new person. So in my case, we are now 13 years together. I think we married already 3 times. I have a completely different fiancé in my case. Completely different fiancé than 3 years ago, than 6 years ago, than 13 years ago.
And what were some of the struggles that you had to encounter in these kind of moments?
Well, one of my biggest insights in my relationship is that I am not her soulmate. And I think I believed until 10 years or something, being 10 years together, that I was her soulmate and she was mine. And what soulmates do in my story is that they push each other to new insights, to a better version of themselves. And I think partners are the perfect person to know you better than you know yourself. They look at you, they know your pains, they know your struggles, but they also know your tremendous strength and desires. So she really made me shine. She was maybe the first one who believed in me even before I believed in myself. And it was the same with her. I pushed her to places and positions she would never be by herself. And then at one point I saw I'm not her soulmate. At least I don't want to be her soulmate. Because soulmates always leave. When the job is done, when the soulmate achieved the growth in the partner, the soulmate goes. Of course, because that's what a soulmate comes to do, right? It's there to show you your biggest perspective, the better version of yourself.
So don't you think that a soulmate should do that constantly?
I think if you meet your soulmate, you're in this position. And it's great because I had finally a partner who believed in me, who said when I was having only the dream to try this on stages, to having the dream to write books, she would encourage me. She said, of course, you're not going to write books, you're going to make bestsellers. That was her first reaction. And I was like, wow, that's a lot of, courage and a lot of trust in me. I don't know if I can even come up with the first chapter, but she already believed that it could be a bestseller. And eventually I wrote, I think, 3 or 4. So it's interesting that your partner sees already the bigger or the higher self, the higher being, the possibility, right? And if you're lucky, the other way around as well. Soulmates. And at one point I realized, I remember I was in the train to Paris. We were doing, sometimes we do retreats together. We just go together for a couple of days. I mean, we have young children, so we cannot leave for a very long time. But we go and then we explicit visit each other's worlds. There's a certain exercise. The time is a little bit too short to get you through the complete process. But basically, it's a certain technique, but I am visiting her world in a kind of meditative state. And it's really beautiful because I get to learn her on a very deep level, but she gets to learn from herself also on the same very deep level. And vice versa. So she visits me as well. And we are in this train and we had this exercise for ourselves to write each other a love letter. So she was writing a love letter for me and I was writing a love letter for her in this 4-hour train. And we arrive in Paris and I have this love letter ready and it was actually the love letter was about, I don't want to be your soulmate anymore. I think I passed that part and I don't want you to be my soulmate anymore. I want to be your life partner. I don't want to get all the time the best out of you and want to show you things you don't see in yourself. I just want to be there behind you with a cup of tea if you need me. So whatever you do is fine. You don't have to shine. You don't have to rise up. You don't have to make a career. If you would like to, it's fine. But I will be there anyway, every step of the way. So instead of walking a bit ahead, showing the possibility, all of a sudden I changed my position to just simply be there for you, next to you. I serve tea. That's what I do. And that's what I wrote. And it was very beautiful. And she got emotional from it. And it was a really romantic few days there in Paris. And now we are a few years further. And we have a very beautiful piece of land in the middle of the Netherlands. And we organize ceremonies there. It's a very beautiful island where we give sweat lodge ceremonies and tipi ceremonies and all that things. And she has a program there. And you know what I do? I cut the grass. I open the door. I basically serve her in her shine. I never asked her to do that. I never told her, you know what, maybe you should. No, it kind of went that way and it feels great. Now she is doing her thing. She leads groups there. It's great. And I just cut the grass and,
You support her in that way.
I support the land and I make it possible in a very different way. So that is another metaphor, or this is very realistic, by the way, but the metaphor drinking a cup of tea together, it's also like this. I mean, I make it happen. And it's so beautiful to see her shine. I don't need per se to be on the stage myself and then that somebody is there for me to catch me if I fall or something like that. It's just really nice to be together. It's nice to support that, or even to cook at home. Tonight I will do that. I'll make a nice dinner, and then she comes home and she shares just how her day was with me. So my whole, I hope you get this, my whole approach to her and to the relationship basically changed from we have to make something of it to if we are together, it's fine. I'll be there anyway.
And what happened that this changed for you?
In what sense?
So were there certain insights or was there a certain event in your life that led to that change?
When it's when we talk about growth, it is always about phases, right? You in the beginning of a relationship, you're very different than in the middle of a relationship, and then you're also very different in the end of a relationship. So I tend to always stay at the beginning of our relationship. But of course, it's a very different person now. 13 years is a long time, but still, I like to approach it as if we are at the beginning of our relationship, because your behavior is very different. If my behavior is like we are at the end of our relationship, of course, we will fight a lot more. Of course, I would be much more tensed. I would be defensive. I would be whatever. I would be basically a dick. In the beginning of a relationship, I'm a caring, loving person. I'm ready to give. And of course, it helps if you agree on this. I mean, we both know that it's much nicer. I mean, I always ask audience also, who had a relationship? Raise your hand if you ever had a relationship. Well, people raise their hands. 99.9 people ever had at least one relationship in their life, right? And then raise again. Which part do you like more? The beginning, the middle, of the end? And it's always the beginning. Then stay at the beginning.
But how do you stay at the beginning?
Do the things you did in the beginning. What do you do in the beginning of a relationship? Mainly.
You go on a lot of dates, I guess.
Dating. That's one thing. Dating is the number one. And the moment people start to live together, they stop dating.
Yeah.
Why? Yeah, because we are already together, right? That was our desire to be all the time together. But you forget to date. And then quality time, which is most of the time the most precious ingredient, especially for a female. Quality time, that somebody really is interested in your world, in your story, not to solve it, but just to be there, disappears. So you live together, you think you arranged being together, but you're not actually together. You kind of start to live parallel lives.
Yeah.
So that one of the first things which doesn't make it is the dating rhythm. And we say date at least minimum once a week. Well, ask people with long-term relationships. They never date or dance or do crazy stuff. Second thing disappears in a long-term relationship is intimacy. People start to have less and less sex, or at least intimate. It doesn't even need to become all the way to sex, but like cuddle, go to bed at the same time, being intimate, without words, but just taking a long bath together, those things. In the beginning of the relationship, you bought a special oil or give each other a massage or something like this, right? But in the middle of the relationship, it's kind of, I think I will stay, watch this series a little bit longer. You go already and I'll come up in a bit. It goes like this. At the end of the relationship, you want to watch Netflix first. You try every excuse not to go to bed at the same time. I mean, it's just behavior. And the funny thing is, the moment you realize that, what is my behavior, you can see in which phase you are. Mm-hmm. Is your behavior completely serving the relationship, or is your behavior trying to avoid the relationship? And to wrap this up, I believe that a relationship is a different identity. A relationship is not between, it's actually literally between two people, but it's not about him or her, or him and him, or her and her, whatever the relationship is, of course. So there is, of course, an I, and there is another, but there is a third entity, and this is the relationship itself.
Yeah.
And if you start to see it like a third entity, not one to lose yourself in, because then there is still only the other, basically, or only the identity of the relationship. But there is this entity, and it's 100% responsibility for the both of you. It's like a living organism, which needs to be taken care of. It needs to be fed, it needs to be nourished, it needs to be cuddled, whatever. So you don't really give it to the other. Sometimes you have nothing to give. You don't actually receive it from the other either. Because sometimes you cannot receive. But if you see it as a different identity, a third identity, something you both are willing to take care of, it's so much more easy.
Mm-hmm.
The relationship is alive. It's not something for granted. It's something you nourish, you even grow up together with. And the moment I realized that, everything started to change. Because if I go home after this interview, I will go home. I go home because I'm looking forward to something.
Yeah.
And in the past, I would go home with the idea of, oh my God, I'm so tired, and now I have to give again something in order to keep her satisfied. Because if she is not satisfied, she will probably go. I mean, she is really pretty. There is a queue from here to the center for her, in my world, right? So I better be there. Slowly, I was dying. Slowly, I was giving myself away. Now I realized it's not about her or me. It's about we choose to nourish this third entity. And that's so beautiful. And this is the space, this entity is of course, it's not it's alive, but it's the not visible, but definitely feelable entity. This is the space where our children grow up. This is the space, the loving, in our case, the loving, respectful environment where our children can be raised. And this is relatively new. I mean, if I take you back like 5 years, 10 years ago, there was no such entity. There was no such space. And then it's all of a sudden about a battle of the ego or battle of the needs or those kind of things. And now we have this entity. Now we have this space at home or on a holiday or whatever. And it's so nice to see the kids grow up in that environment. I really believe that you cannot raise your kids other than to live it. So they will copy what you do. They don't listen to, not my kids don't listen to what I say, but they copy what I do. If I want them to watch less television, I'll better switch my phone off when I'm at home, right?
Yeah.
If I want them to relax and just to play a nice whatever card game or something like this, I'll better do not bring my computer up. I don't work at home, all this kind of thing. So you serve the entity. And if you can see it as an entity, it's all of a sudden very easy. Are you poisoning the space? No? Do you make it toxic? Or are you nourishing the space? Are you filling it with love and attention? And of course, we're all humans. It's not kumbaya all the time with us. But I can now realize, I poisoned the space. I'm sorry, I don't want that. It's my life. I would like to have a peaceful, loving, harmonious life. And I create that by being present, by nourishing the space. And if I don't, I ruin my life and the life of my kids, the life of the people I love. So why should I? And this all comes back to awareness. It's all about, are you aware? Or if I put it a bit stronger, are you awake?
Mm-hmm.
Because this is a skill. It's not something I discovered all of a sudden. It's something I read in a book. And then I wrote something about it.
And you mentioned before that most of the relationships are stuck on intimacy with time, especially.
I think so. We did a research in our audience, and there was 90. I think it was 97, but it could also be 99% of the people. They said that they would like to have a better sex life with their, being more intimate with their partners. Yeah.
Yeah, and
both female and male, by the way. Yeah.
So that especially happens with time, and a lot of people, have trouble talking about that stuff.
It happens mainly with kids. When there are kids involved, then there's the problem. The thing what happens when there are children born is that it's not only giving birth of a child, it's also giving birth of a mother and hopefully also of a father. Fathers are usually a bit later, but it's not only the child who gets born, it's also all of a sudden there is also a mother, which is also again a different identity. At least being a mom is something completely different than being a hot and sexy girlfriend.
Mm-hmm.
being a father is something completely different, especially nowadays, than being the hot and sexy boyfriend. So all of a sudden, you're not girlfriend and boyfriend anymore. All of a sudden, you become parents. And before you figure out how that works, your sex life will drop dramatically in most cases. So you kind of have to rediscover each other. You have to rediscover the relationship. You have to rediscover your sex life. But also, if there are no children involved, work is most of the time the case that it becomes more important. And it's actually an avoiding mechanism. So intimacy, especially if you really understand on a deeper level, more the tantric part of sexuality or the creational part of energy of sexuality, it's scary. It's so intimate that people prefer not to go there because they're somewhat ashamed. I think shame is one of the lowest energies you can get to. And I know that because on these three things, like love, I think I'm perfectly fine. Practicalities, we have to work hard on this, but at least we have the focus on it and we have some people taking care of that. I'm in the luxurious position that we can hire people to organize our lives a bit. So a personal assistant, some cleaners who do something, you can organize that part. You have to do that, but we organize it pretty well, if you ask me. But then intimacy, it's also for us still the most vulnerable and also shameful part. And I think shame is the lowest energy you can find yourself in. If you are ashamed, you are ready to do whatever not to go there.
And how do you think you can create that safe space between two people to talk about it and not to be ashamed?
Yeah, you call it the space. That's actually beautiful put. I think if you realize this space, which I call the third entity, so there is this space between two people. I mean, it can also be between you and me right now. It can be safe. And when it's safe, somebody is willing to cross the bridge. If it's not safe, somebody will not cross the bridge. I will be very careful what I say. You might use it against me. If you would be this critical TV or whatever media journalist, we would have a different conversation because you can feel it immediately. The space is not sacred enough to be truly honest, or at least to open up and try to find something in yourself because it's too vulnerable.
Yeah, and also not be judged for it, I guess, as well.
Exactly. So it's kind of a workout. It's a technique. It sounds so silly to say it like this, but it's a certain technique to sit together and really create this sacred space. If it's not there, it will establish pretty fast. And how we do it is that we sit across each other, close our eyes, and really consciously cross the bridge to one another. So
in your head?
Yes, I visualize literally a bridge. So then step by step, I'm over the bridge. And when I arrive in the world of the other, I just say this with just, a small gesture or something like this. That I'm truly there. And when I walk step by step, and when I cross the bridge step by step, I let go of my own reality. I let go of my own assumptions. I let go of my own pain, my own needs, even my own name. It's not about me anymore. And the moment the other does that as well, so I'm in your world, you're in mine, I'm curious about you. So tell me who you are. And the other is, you are curious about me. So tell me who you are. And of course, one after another, then you will immediately feel that there is so much space here. Actually, the space itself is so healing because I will catch you if you fall. It's okay. And you will catch me if I fall. I feel that. And then I can open up and I actually do a self-research with you as a witness. It's not the pain you remember as a child, but it's the loneliness. We even have a special brain part for it. So it's the loneliness that there was not, it's a very simple example, but if you would have this I don't know if it's in other countries like this, but I think it's like this. In Holland, you have to give presentations from a very young age, right? So literally from 7-8 years old, you have to give this 5-10 minute presentation in front of the whole class. And then it's such a cruel event the rest of the class can judge your presentation. And if it was not good, they would love to give you a very
bad feedback,
very low feedback on this. So what do you learn there? What do you remember? Probably the loneliness, that there was nobody there for you to catch you. So one thing I taught my children is, because we prepare these kind of presentations, right? That I am there for them at the back of the room. I was never literally there, but I said, project me in the back of the room. Mm-hmm. I will always be there for you. If it works, fine. If it doesn't work, fine. You learn something, it's fine. But I will always be there. And that achieves that they don't feel alone. So the worst that can happen to you is, I got seriously beaten up in my childhood. I cannot recall the beatings. I can't. I cannot, even if it would be visible nowadays, I cannot remember it. I cannot even go back to that. Mm. Even if I go back to it, I would not feel that physical pain.
Yeah.
But I do remember that there was nobody there to protect me. Not a friend, not my parents. That is the loneliness. So what do you learn? Okay, I should avoid certain people. I should avoid boys who are bigger than me. I should avoid certain guys who play football, whatever, because they are the aggressors, right? So you make whole kind of concept, a programming, as you wish, to avoid certain pain. So the biggest pain we can encounter, I think, is loneliness, that there is nobody for you. Now we are here in this relationship. And I realize that I'm actually afraid for real masculine energy, like these tough guys. I'm on a deep level afraid. Now, I told you before, my fiancée is a very pretty lady. Who do you think I fear the most? Not everybody who's chasing her, but the tough guys. Uh-huh. The little bit sporty, with a nice, little bit darker skin and well done hair and a little bit extra muscle. And it has nothing to do with her. It has nothing to do with him. It has something to do with my past, that I felt lonely at the moment these guys are beating me up. Mm-hmm. Right?
Yeah.
Now we are here in this conversation. So she's sitting in front of me. We established this sacred space. We put also some candles and we make it into something, right? And she visits me in this world. I didn't know this about myself. I completely forgot that I was actually afraid of this type of man. Now she knows it. Now I know it. And it feels really great. Why? She got me back in a situation where I was beaten up, but who was there? She. So I relived the same, maybe even traumatic. This is a not such a traumatic event in my case, but you can imagine you can go back to really painful, traumatic events. And from that moment on, your loved one is there with you in the same image. So I can never go back to the same situation without thinking of her. So all of a sudden, I'm not alone anymore. If you have a problem speaking for groups, probably it's related to something in the past. Because if you can speak for one person, you can speak for 1,000. It's the same technique, but obviously something else happens with most people. That has nothing to do with the 1,000 people. It has something to do with what happened in the past, why you feel lonely. Now, if I visit you and we go there to this older moment.
And do I then describe everything that's happening in my head to you?
Yeah, we look each other in the eye. So you open your eyes once you're over the bridge, right? And you really stay connected and are very, very close, very, very, very close by. Mm-hmm. And then you share a little bit, hey, I see this, I'm in this classroom and I see this girl and him and the teacher and they're laughing at me and I say, okay, and I repeat. So we are there in your classroom and you see this girl and you see your teacher and please continue. And then she shares something and I repeat and she shares something and I repeat. And I'm totally with her. I have no judgment. I don't try to fix it. The only thing I do is follow her in her imagined or whatever she in her memory She remembers the situation, and I'm there with her. That's the only thing I do. And on this very deep level, I realized, oh my God, I'm afraid of this type of guys. And it has nothing to do with you. And it deepens our relationship so much. And this is just an example. You can imagine if this goes on sexuality, for example. What is your desire? What is your truly deepest sexual desire? And you're not completely sure if your partner is up for it. You don't even know yourself if you're up for it. And then you have this conversation like this, right? So I see, I had a fantasy about this and this. And she repeats, so you had a fantasy about this and this. Without judgment. And it's difficult because the moment I share something which all of a sudden triggers something in her world, the sacred space is gone. Mm-hmm. And immediately if she tries to fix something, poison something, because she brings something from her world in mine, you have the opposite effect. It will literally damage the relationship. That's why you have to be a little bit careful with this exercise, and that's why we go every 6 weeks to a therapist to do that. Our therapist, he is able to hold the space for us. So when we are just the two of us, we do this from time to time with very nice topics. For example, I visit her first kiss with somebody. It's still a bit triggering because it's also, you kissed also with other guys. Interesting. But I'm there and without judgment, I'm there. It's a very nice exercise.
I can imagine that's really difficult to do that for you personally and like your own ego.
Yeah, but kissing is relatively easy, right? Yeah. Because she kissed with somebody else before, right? But now, for example, if you cheat in a relationship, longer relationship, there is distraction or even infidelity. And then visit that. How was that? What did you dare desire? What did you discover? How was that? Can I be with you there? Why do people cheat? Because they feel lonely. So what does this exercise bring you when you are in a relationship and you want to continue this relationship? And the loneliness.
I think also often it's just that there's something missing in the relationship and you find someone else who can give it to you.
Honestly, I think you are not looking for somebody else. You are looking for finding yourself again in the mirror of this somebody else. I think people who cheat or who think another relationship will help them better, they lost a certain thing in the relationship. And we tend to say that a relationship starts after the first crisis. And modern relationships are very much, because we have this Instagram kind of lives, right? Everything should be perfect and fine.
Totally.
If you look all your life through a filter, reality sucks. But if you are real, this podcast is called Raw and Real, right? I like raw and real conversations, raw and real relationships. And that means crisis is an unavoidable part of it. So a relationship starts from your first crisis. Why? Because you made the complete circle. First you fall in love, then you have the power struggle, then you went through the status quo. It was relatively nice, maybe for an hour, maybe for 10 years, but it was somewhere relatively nice. And then one or both wants to change something, often wants to grow. And you grow always. You grow at least older. So always change is inevitable. There's always change. So then you hit this point of crisis, and if you grow a little bit into this, you call it transformation. One of both, and that therefore the relationship, the third entity, is transforming. Mm-hmm. Because nothing, you probably heard yourself saying this. I wish we could go back to the start. I wish we could go back to the beginning. Even if you could, you really wouldn't want that. You can stay at the beginning, that's different. But if you want to go back to the beginning, that means you also let go of all the lessons or who you became. It's just literally impossible to go back to the beginning. But what people, I think, should realize is that transformation, better than crisis, right? Transformation is maybe the deeper goal of a relationship. Maybe that's why we have relationships. To transform. To rediscover ourselves, to rediscover relationships, to rediscover connection. And then once you did that, and this exercise I just explained is a way of doing that. There are many different ways, of course. Then all of a sudden you fall in love. And this is exactly what happened with us. If you ask me now, when did your relationship with Emanuela started? I don't say 10 years ago. I wouldn't say 6 years ago. I would say maybe 3 years ago. After our serious crisis, then our relationship started.
You think because it was then that deep or then that depth came?
We were splitting up. We were at the end of our relationship at the time. We were literally splitting up. Everything had been said. We just, our youngest boy was just, I think, about 2 years old or something. We got kids. We had a really nice house, and we were completely done. But we didn't split up. We searched for help. So instead of separating, she was the wiser one. Often women are. She was the wiser one, asking me to go with her in therapy. And imagine me with my big ego. I wrote books about this topic. I probably give the biggest seminar in the world when it comes to love and relationships. Needing to go in therapy with a Dutch guy who know me for sure. Not gonna happen, right? But I realized, wait a minute, there is this third entity. There is this thing which is not about me, not about her. There's this third entity, and the third entity needs terribly help. Mm-hmm. So we went, and the first relationship therapist was okay, but it didn't really fit us, especially not her. And it's interesting, if you're considering going to a relationship therapist, which I really, really encourage everybody to do, go to somebody where you really feel you can learn something from. So we went to the first one, didn't really work. Second one didn't really work, but we didn't give up. We started to like it. We started to grow into it. We started to read more books about it, learn more skills, but still we didn't find the right way until we came to this one guy who really, really got it. He taught us about this over the bridge thing. He taught us about the sacred space, how we could serve it, this whole entity thing. I didn't think of all that. He taught us how to do that. And we kind of put it in practice. So if you ask me, when did you meet her? Then, in those sessions, then I met her. Mm-hmm. Now I understand her at least way better. I will never completely understand her. I will never completely understand myself either. But it's so beautiful to visit yourself on a deeper level in the eye of a person who loves you so deeply. Mm-hmm. Still, every 6 weeks we go to this guy. Every time when we go, it's a pretty long drive. We say to each other, why are we going? We are so fine. We're getting married. We are happy. It's fine. There are no... In the past, I used to have whole lists of things we should work on, right? There are no lists anymore. Every time when we drive back is, oh my God, when is the next session? When we really need a lot of extra help, because you grow. It's not from pain anymore, but it's from desire. And then he it's not every week, of course. We do this every 6 weeks, every 8 weeks, whatever. It's not, maybe you can be in therapy all your life, but it's an impulse to grow. And I think that is the biggest compliment you can give to your relationship, to this entity, if you like. Because growth is the constant factor. Change is constant as well. It's always changing. So better get ready for it. And I am very proud that, at least for now, we can show our children how great it is to develop, to love, to also not know it, and to stay together. It's really nice to stay together for a long time with one person. I start to understand that. And I will not say that we will stay forever together. I think you shouldn't, because you don't know. I think if you commit, not on the level of commitment, but on a word level, you say to I'm going to stay for the rest of your life, you're probably lying. So I like to choose every day.
Do you think that you're lying because you just don't know what's going to happen in the future?
The future never happened. And, love is not a possession. So love is actually much more freedom. True love has more to do with freedom than with possession, than with rules, than even with monogamy, if you like. It is in a way, if you really love somebody, let him go. Let her go. Because that's love. Then if it returns, if it comes back to you, you might have a relationship. But if you're not willing to let go of somebody, oh no, please don't go, it has nothing to do with love. Well, that's what happened with us. We were about 10 years together. The relationship was pretty over. And we were, okay, maybe it was not the nicest way, but we were ready to let each other go. And then all of a sudden we realized there's so much reason to stay together. But that's from a much more freedom point of view. So love is more related to freedom than to possession.
Yeah.
And I think most people have love from a possessive point of view, which has nothing to do with love. And it always, always, always will end up in not happy relationships, if you ask me.
I think I would agree with that. So let's say if someone would want to take a similar career like you have, what kind of advice would you give them, or what do you think is the most important skill you need in order to do that?
I don't know if I would recommend to have a life like this, but okay, that's of course not up to me to say that. Well, when we started, there was not a job offer for two guys with a slideshow doing this kind of conferences, seminars, shows, if you want to put it that way. It didn't exist. So we created our own way of doing this. And that's probably my biggest advice. So create your own way. Don't copy it. I mean, be inspired. It's totally fine. Come and see how we do it and copy the best of it. Leave all the bullshit out. And then you have probably a little bit of an insight how you might do it. But if you try, and believe me, a lot of people tried. If you try to become us or our way, try to do it our way, you will fail. It is, first of all, not very easy. It's if I would have known how much it will ask from me, from the people around me, and from the whole team. We are nowadays with a pretty large team. I don't know if I would do it again. So don't go there, but learn from it, but don't become it. And then find your own way, become bigger, better, whatever, but in a different way. I mean, we are already here, so that's already taken, you can say, but there is, of course, a lot of opportunity to do it in a different way. I'm very happy there was nobody in front of us, not in Holland at least. So we had to kind of figure out our way, which means you stay very close to yourself. It's not about the size of the audience. It's not about how many books you sell. Actually, it shouldn't matter, because if you try to sell as many books as possible, what are you going to do? You write what they want to hear. Nobody learns something from that because they already know that. They just simply repeat themselves. Write what you want to write. And if only one person will read it and you change somebody's life, you probably achieve more than becoming this bestseller author or whatever. It's not relevant.
And do you still have like a last key takeaway, something that helped you grow personally you would still like to share?
Well, one of my biggest insights is everything is a skill, or almost everything is a skill. And the good thing about skills is that you can learn them. I mean, just read, follow courses, listen to podcasts, whatever. Take a. I mean, as I said, I'm a dropout, right? I never finished a proper school, but I think I studied more than average people did or do. Why? Because I simply had to. So I read books, I listen to crazy lot of podcasts, I visit pretty much every seminar I can follow. And it's a fun thing to do. It's always good for something. I mean, I like it a lot. So find your way to educate yourself, because most of the things are already there. You don't have to be unique because you're not. You don't have to be creative. It's not necessary. You just speak your truth and share what you learned before. Nothing what I shared with you today is totally mine. Of course, I made it mine because I added things to it. I said it, but they're all non-original ideas.
Mm-hmm.
I just learned something down the road, and if you do that for quite some time, you might become a bit wiser person. And so don't become arrogant, or I really don't like to go to places or courses or gurus even who say they think they know it. because they don't. They act like they do, but they don't. And it's much more interesting to be with somebody who is exploring kind of, it might work this way, but figure it out yourself. It might work that way. It's better to have a coach than to have a guru, if you ask me. But anyway, that's my point of view.
All right, perfect. Thank you so much for sharing so many tips on relationships and all of your personal experiences.
You're welcome.
And for everyone who's watching or listening, if you like the talk today, please make sure to like the video.